Mr. Colorado. When do you expect all the KSC infrastructure to be in place so you'll be able to launch all of this from KSC as opposed to Cape Canaveral Air Station?
The exploration mission 1 launch date is in December of 2017, so that's our target. So we'll be ready earlier that year to support for the
Todd Halverson reported today, first for Robert Cabana and then a follow-up. I was wondering if you could tell us what your thoughts are about the selection of an asteroid as the initial target for the Orion spacecraft, as opposed to, say, returning to the moon like some in Congress would choose to do.
Todd, we're excited about the mission. I think it's really neat that the first time we fly it with crew, we've actually got someplace to go with it, with something to accomplish with it. This is not going to be easy. It's extremely challenging. And all the technology that is going to be required to accomplish this mission, it's all stuff that we need for further exploration beyond our home planet. The solar electric propulsion, the autonomous rendezvous, proximity ops, docking, robotic operations, getting the crew there. So I think as we move on, we're excited about it, absolutely. And we want to explore. We want to get beyond planet Earth, and we're extremely proud of what we've accomplished so far, and we look forward to the challenge of the future.
Thanks, and for guest Mark Geyer, I'm wondering if you can give us an idea of what your major milestones are going to be with Orion between now and the flight in September 2014, when you're going to put power on the vehicle for the first time, and could you also update us on the planning for the follow-on pad-abort mission? Thanks.
Great. Yeah, so a couple of big things. So we're doing this test now, which is the static test. And then when we're done, we'll take it out of this unit and actually finish the installation. So we put a lot of the propulsion tubing, Eclipse tubing. We do about 300 welds on tubes right here in this factory after this. Then we install the back shell and the tiles. The tiles will actually be bonded here in this hall as well. And all the cables that are going to go into this unit are being built here, right here in this factory as well. So power on now is probably going to be late summer, Todd, probably in that August time frame. The big thing is getting the tubes welded. We have to weld the tubes. You don't want your computers, if you think about it, you wouldn't want your computer sitting next to a welder. So we got to weld the tubes first, then the computers will come and we'll stick them in and turn them on. So that's the time frame. We'll deliver this vehicle, turn it over to the launch vehicle folks probably in the January, February time frame of next year. That's what we're looking at. Remember the service module, which is further down the unit, which is basically made of composites and aluminum, that also is being finished, and that's part of the pieces that have to be done. We have a big fairing separation test that'll happen in the summer as well. Todd, if you remember the service module fairings that encapsulate the service module, there's 3 very large fairings. I don't think can't see the picture here. But anyway, they will be, that's one of the key tests is to test the separation of those fairings. So we'll do a test out in Sunnyvale where we'll actually blow the pyros and make sure that they separate correctly. That's coming up in the summer. And then we actually do what we call a hot fire test of the propulsion system that will be mounted on the crew module, where we actually have key thrusters, tanks, and tubing to simulate how the thrusters are operated relative to one another to make sure that they're integrated well. That'll actually be out in Sacramento, also I think May, June timeframe. So those are the key things. Sorry?
Follow-up flight?
So the follow-up flight is 2017, just like Scott said. So our plan is to EM1 is the next flight. So we'll be, we're actually going through the design cycle now for EM1, which is the flight that'll fly at 17. And then design cycle, we roll in changes like some of the mass savings ideas to get the mass down from the flight test article. That's actually happening now in the spring.
Just a quick follow-up. Have you removed from the schedule then the flight on the Peacekeeper?
No, so that's in 18. So EM1 is in 17, and then AA2 is in 18. So that is an abort test. So we'll take this crew module that we flew on EFT1, we'll refurb it, we'll put a new launch abort system on it, new fairings, new 500,000 pound abort motor on it, attitude control motor, Jetson motor. put it on top of a Peacekeeper stage, and launch it out of LC-46, I believe, right here in KSC. So it's a much different test. You're basically trying to get to max dynamic pressure and transonic speed when you're going to very high speeds and high dynamic pressure. And you want to make sure that the launch abort system can actually fly the vehicle, that it doesn't tumble. So that's the condition we're trying to put it in. And it's a great test for here because then we can land in the water and recover the element afterwards. So that's an 18. Okay.
Mark, you can go ahead and state my questions actually.
Okay.
So Jason Ryan from AmericanSpace.com. Follow up on what Todd said was with the milestones we're looking at, we're seeing Orion being developed here, but the public still has this perception that for some reason we're out of the space flight business. When do you think this particular version of Orion, which is going to fly EFT-1, what milestone would be the point that lets the public know that guess what, we're back in the game? Thank you.
Well, the most obvious would be the flight itself, right? And so we'll be on a large rocket. We'll be flying right out here, out of the Cape on the Delta IV Heavy, and then we'll be landing off the coast of California and recover just like a nominal. The recovery would be like a nominal. So I think that's the key thing. Obviously, EFT-1 does a huge amount of work for us in testing these key systems, making sure the parachutes work, guidance works, separation works, heat shield works. All those things are important technical things, but I think you're pulling on a very important point. It also shows it's demonstrable evidence that we're actually flying exploration and getting ready to fly. So.
Steve Baird, WFTV, and this is a good springboard. I have no preference who answers this. Obviously, Space Coast is always worried about jobs in the wake of the shuttle program winding down. Do you have a rough timeline of when jobs will start to peak and people, again, will see not only are we back in the space flight business, but we're back in the jobs on the Space Coast business? Are there any numbers you can throw out there that, we'll see this number then and this number here?
This production facility supports 300 jobs that came here in partnership with the state of Florida that paid for the refurbishment of this facility. And this is a phenomenal facility. Apollo astronauts went to the moon from here, and one day astronauts are going to go to Mars from here. That's pretty darn amazing. The jobs will ramp up, but it's never going to be what it was. And, as I've said before, we're flying different vehicles. We have a different mission. And as we progress, when we get closer to launch and we're processing the actual vehicle here, we'll see a few more jobs. But it's not just the jobs supporting SLS, MPCV, Orion, our exploration program. It's the jobs that we bring here supporting commercial crew, commercial spaceflight. That's what's also critical to the area. As I've said in the past, I think eventually we'll get to where we have around 10,000 people working here at the Cape. And that hopefully within the next 2 to 3 years we'll see that. But there's no guarantees. We'll see how it all plays out, but we're doing all the right things to make that happen.
I think one of the key things that Bob pushed on it is, so it's a simpler vehicle to operate and process, but one of the key things we did was bring the factory here. This is the first time that the assembly of the flight article is actually here in Florida. Usually it's been in other states, so that's a huge change for Orion. And you see it here today, all the welders, the people doing the installations, the people making the cables, all that is right here.
I was going to say it at the end, I'll say it now, because the questions are brought up. We are excited about the mission that we have, but we're really excited to show you the progress that we've made. We've made tremendous progress, and we want you to see it. And, that's a real flight vehicle behind us that's going to fly next year. That's pretty darn amazing, considering this was an empty high bay 3 years ago.
WFE News. Two questions actually. The first is, how has sequestration affected the Orion program? And also, can you explain, as I understand it, the Orion capsule will launch next year on the Atlas V rocket, and it will launch in 2017, I think, on the SLS. Can you explain the difference between the Atlas and the SLS, and what added capabilities the SLS will have in addition to that would make better than Atlas?
Let's see, I'll start with the technical one, and it's the easier to answer. So it's actually a Delta IV Heavy. It's similar to an Atlas V in capability. Delta IV Heavy is a little more capable, and it actually is easier for us to integrate. On the Orion, we have not just the capsule itself and service module, but also a launch abort. And on Delta IV, we can actually attach that to the upper stage structure of the Delta IV, so it was easy to integrate, so that's why we chose the Delta IV. Delta IV can really just gets us enough to do a good test. It gets us, like I said, about 3,600 nautical miles. That's its real capability to throw the Orion, this particular Orion configuration. So it gets us, like I said, to about 84% of the lunar velocity. So that's a great test for the heat shield while SLS is getting finished. But you need SLS to do these big missions. You need SLS to go do this asteroid mission because you need more velocity, you need more energy to push you further into the solar system. So that, to me, that's the big difference. And then as far as sequestration, we're still working through that. Right now, it doesn't significantly affect our bottom line budget, so that was good for us. It wasn't a big change, and so we're working with headquarters to see exactly what the dollars will be, but it hasn't changed the work on EFT1.
Any other questions? Well, again, I want to thank you all for coming today. As I said, we are extremely excited about our mission. We're extremely excited about the progress that we've made, and we'll try and find more opportunities as we move ahead to really show the progress we're making, because we're going to get there. We're going to make this happen on time, within budget. That's our goal, and I think it's really an awesome time to be here at the Kennedy Space Center to see the progress that we're making toward the future. So thanks again. This is Mark. How you doing? You're good anywhere you want. All right. All right. You guys have a great rest of the day. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah. It'll be good. September. We have to push this out. Out the door. Round house. We will be able to start phone testing. So it's just 12 months. I got to we'll get there. We'll be working on it. 7. We'll work right now. Kids. 18th September. Yeah, we've got the range. The vehicle, the launch vehicle, we're going to launch is being built in Canaveral.
I'm the herd of friends.
Hi, how you doing, man?
Good to see you, man.
Thanks for coming out.
Just came back from Tennessee a couple of weeks ago.
Good to see you.
Write us up.
All right. We're going to shed positive light on your spacecraft.
Good. I like that.
So the load testing, when is that taking place?
They're getting it configured right now for it, and we'll start here in a couple of weeks. Start pushing on.
The next big thing we do is one of the actuators that start to just make structure here attached to the vehicle and start pushing.
Yeah, I've been poking sticks at it.
Hopefully,
Banging the hammer, see what falls off. Like my car, every time I fix my car. Oh, that reminds me, that's my project today.
Coming here.
Pulling my fuel tank out of my van. I was going to do it the last couple of days, but then it was going to rain. I got to drop the fuel tank, stick a new fuel pump in. Yeesh. Not looking for the bike, man.
We're here. We're open 24/7.
It's not that big of a deal. It's just something to dread. I'll dread it for a few
Someone will be here.
Lisa Fowler has the draft itinerary. Why do I think it's going to be sometime around 1?
I think Amber has the
Amber has
it.
Okay.
So so I'm sure we'll get copies.
Wednesday, this week?
Yeah.
Oh, that's neat.
Yeah, they're coming over here for vacation or something, and it's one of our takers, right? I met this one.